Jones announced his retirement after being suspended for 4 matches on a striking charge.
Would have been thrown out in the court of law, but in there they make their own rules. They do their own justice and...
Yeah, that was towards the end of my period at Carlton. So my last year there was 1985.
He held it too long. Great tackle by Big Wow Jones there.
Bounces toward Carey, bounces past him. Warren Jones, hand pass it. Meldrum. The shot toward goal by Meldrum. Is it the 13th goal coming up? It is.
When the Prime Minister's wife calls you wow, you say, well, my name has stuck.
Thank you for joining me today, Warren. It's a pleasure to have you on and have a chat.
You're welcome.
Mate, I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things. I mean, when I had a look online, as other people, when they look up someone who's been a sports celebrity, let's say, and there's lots and lots of articles and lots of information, and there's so much stuff about your time in the footy back in the day, and I'm sure that's what a lot of people, I guess, talk to you about, and I want to touch a little bit on that too. So if we start there, you had 10 years on the field in, was it called professional grade back then? Is that what you would have called yourself?
It was professional, but in the sense of a true professional, we actually had to work too. So you had a role as in a job to earn a living, and you played football and trained in your own time, and there wasn't the money there is today out there. So it was essentially as much as you would get in a normal role, the salary you got from playing football, or even a bit less.
Yeah. Okay. So you had another job at the time. Was it a trade? Was it just an office job? Like, what was that? What was getting you by while you're playing footy?
But when I first started playing football, it was very hard to get a job because you'd have a lot of time out. You want to go to training. You'd have injuries, having to see physiotherapists and the like. So a lot of people were very, very reluctant to hire you. And I essentially got a job driving a truck for the brewery. That's what I did.
Right.
In my early days. But it became a bit unworkable. I think I did it for about a year and a half, and sort of complemented, I suppose, the fitness side of things. I was pretty active, hopping up and down on the truck and jumping and all these sorts of things, and unloading, cartons of beer and so forth. And that would have helped with the fitness and so forth. But one particular day, I'd started at 6:30 in the morning, and I got back to the depot, and they gave me a load with about 6 different deliveries. So every delivery takes about an hour. So I got equivalent of 6 hours worth of deliveries, and I only had 4 hours to do it. And then I had to go and play a game of football, which was a night game. So I'd work 12 hours, race straight to the game, got changed out of my work gear, put my socks and shorts on, and then played 100 minutes of highly competitive AFL football.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and that is completely different to where it is now, where as you touched on, a professional, I guess, athlete or professional football or whatever it might be. One thing I picked up from what you're talking about, I mean, that was a pretty good job to have. Did that mean that you shouted everyone beers on Friday half?
I always had some overs. So if you broke a dozen bottles, usually got the chance to take a couple of extra ones home. So there were always some overs, and I think a couple of guys I played footy with across the road from my place, and they used to break into my house every time I went away for the weekend to stockpile some of the leftovers that I had at home. But that was the catalyst or the change. So I fronted the club and I said, I can't do this. This is, it's a bit too hard. And it just so happened that there was a business being set up called VFL Insurances, where they wanted to get a player from each club to represent the AFL team and promote the sale of insurance type products. They had a car insurance, car and house insurance,
right,
general insurance agency, and they wanted to get involved in the life insurance part of it. And Scottish Amicable were the life office at the time that worked together with VFL Insurances, and I represented So all of a sudden now I had a job that was a sales job, and I would make my calls in the daytime and catch up with families and business type people during the course of the day. So it fitted in with the lifestyle that I had, in that I had to play footy. There was no physical activity. It was just on the phone and reaching out to my network of people and organising some interviews and presentations.
Right. So, and that was the start into your finance industry type career, like that insurance, finance, all that sort of stuff. And did that interest you, or was it just a job you took because it was easy at the time?
A bit of both.
Yeah.
I'm sort of looking for a career. I didn't have a lot in the way of education, so it's not as though I was had the experience or the education to get a corporate job. But it just so happened this one was where I was able to leverage off the brand of AFL or VFL at that time, and give you an example of how tricky it was to get an interview or an opportunity to present to someone. When people applied for their car insurance, I'd ask them what team they'd vote for. So I'd go through all the proposals, pull up all the Carlton supporters, and then ring them and say, "Hi, I'm Warren Jones from VFL Insurances. I'd like to come and talk to you about your insurance and and savings program. Would you like to see me?" Well, no problem, come and see us. So it was quite an easy gig from that point of view, but I had to make it pretty clear that when I arrived, I'd be happy to sit down with the family and talk footy and stories and those sorts of things, but let's get the business part of it out of the way first.
Yeah.
And I'm incentivised to sit back and wait for the whole process to finish, and hopefully I'd make a sale and spend a bit more time with them.
So, one of the original brand ambassadors, then, Warren. You started a trend, it seems.
I certainly did.
And okay, so when you were playing footy, and you said you weren't sure on a career and what have you, and you took this job, did you realise then, or did you go into footy knowing that, okay, I've got X number of years where this is going to be, it is what it is, and then after that I've got to do something else? Or was it like, I'm indestructible, I can do this forever, and you never thought about career afterwards?
I always knew that the career would finish, as in football, and I didn't know how long that would be. It could be 2 or 3 years, and I, obviously in the initial stages, I was only playing, 4 or 6 games in the first couple of years. And I was quite raw as a player, and I was trying to develop my game, improve my fitness and skill level to actually play at that level, because I'd only played probably 4 years of AFL before being recruited to Carlton. So I had a fair bit of work to do. There was a lot of pressure on. There were some great players at Carlton. And I did have a conversation a couple of times with the chairman of selectors saying to me, "Warren, I don't think you're up to it. Maybe you find another club to go to and go back into the bush and play." And I'd say, "Well, give us a chance. I'll just work my proverbial off, and I'll demonstrate to you that I can play the game, and I'll be an asset to the club." And they'd say, "All right, we like what you're saying." So I kept there, and I demonstrated that I was prepared to work hard. I gave my all at the club. I wasn't a great player from a skill point of view, but I showed them that I did a lot of the hard stuff and the tackles and shepherding and and having a presence out there on the ground, which made up for my lack of skill.
Do you think that in this sport, or in any sort of professional level sport nowadays, that the sports are better or worse off with the way that the remuneration works, as in that they're paid athletes as opposed to doing what you had to do and work on the side?
Well, I think the way it works at the moment is that, if you're involved in a footy club, you have a contract, and away you go when you're remunerated for what you do.
Yeah. And is that better for the fans and the players? Do you think, does it make it more clear because it's their job, or does it put other restraints on them and the clubs?
Well, you've got it's a pretty big deal these days. AFL, like they make $4 or $5 billion a year every 5 years out of the TV rights. So there's money there to be divvied up, and the players that are committing to the game they're the ones that have got to reap the rewards of that. And obviously the Players Association have had a lot to do with that in negotiating deals where not just current players but past players are looked after. An example of that is that if I get injured or I've got some sort of a complaint that's a carryover from my football career, all my medical expenses are all covered. So I never have to put my hand in my pocket at all. And that's quite unique in the sporting environment.
That's good.
I don't think rugby league or the soccer clubs have that. But in AFL, if you've played one senior game, I have a hip replacement, I'm 10 grand out of pocket, that's paid for. I have a knee replacement, same story.
Yeah, that's really
teeth start falling out, I get my teeth fixed. Or if I've got some psychological issues, I can see a psychologist, psychiatrist, and get myself back on track again, all paid for by the AFL as part of the enterprise bargaining that the AFL has done with the Players Association.
Yeah, that's good. That's a real benefit. I really like hearing that sort of stuff. So let's talk about one of your seasons there. You got real sick and you're out most of the season with glandular fever, I believe.
Yeah, that was towards the end of my period at Carlton. So my last year there was 1985. I was having a really good year. Played the first couple of games, and then I just felt really unwell. I felt like I had no energy, very lethargic, and I ended up playing in the reserves in the third game, I think, for the year. And then I got diagnosed with chronic fatigue or glandular fever. So that was the end of my season for me.
Right.
And because I was on a contract that said if whatever payments you got were aligned with what if you're playing in the seconds or the seniors. And because I'd played a game in the reserves because I'd been crook the week before and I wasn't really playing well, all of a sudden I just got reserve match payments for the year, even though I had a contract that was worth about 40 grand.
Right.
So there was a lot of anomalies there, and I didn't really get looked after from a financial point of view during that year. And at the end of the year, they basically said, Justin Madden's now hit his straps. We don't need you anymore. We've got Satori and Kernahan and Motley and all these guys coming across next year. So we're going to let you go. So they didn't honour my contract then, nor they honoured my contract for the following year. So I ended up being given an opportunity to play at St Kilda for 1 year. And I took that on and took quite a significant pay cut to play for St Kilda. And I enjoyed that time down there with a pretty basic club with a lot of young talent that were, great, ended up being great players. And I provided as I did with Peter McConville and some other Carlton players that went down there, we provided some guidance about how to prepare yourself for AFL football, which they had nothing previously. So it was very satisfying to be involved in that club. Ended up playing there for 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay. And in that time when you were sick and then when you went down to St Kilda and you're helping them sort of prepare, were you starting to think at that point, now, am I going to need to do this when I leave footy? What am I going to do to prepare? Like, how did you begin your transition from footy into, the other workforce, like the non-sporting workforce?
So I still didn't think at that time that a career in financial planning was actually a career. We were sort of still essentially salespeople. They're not, the financial planning community today are quite, they're professional people. They go to university and all that sort of stuff. And I considered what to do going forward. And I'm I'm down at St Kilda. My football career is just about finished, and I'm making that decision about what I want to do going forward. So I felt that being a financial planner or a salesperson wasn't a career for me. Had I got an opportunity to do work in in a sales manager role, that would be different. That would be a career. But there was nothing available to me at that time. So I went off and I decided I was going to be a helicopter pilot. So I went off and did my education part, which is a Bachelor of Aviation.
Yep.
Completed my commercial subjects and commenced flying. And I was flying helicopters around for the next 12 months, getting my hours up and getting trained up. And my plan was to move up onto up to Port Douglas or somewhere like that, buy a machine and run charters and stuff like that.
Sure.
And in the process of doing that, it's a matter. Sometimes you create your own luck. So I'm at the office one day, and it was 1987. It was October, about the time of the crash. And they said, why don't you come and join our business, as in Scottish Amicable, as a sales manager, business development manager. And I went, okay. So all of a sudden I've got this career thrown at me. All of a sudden I've just about created my own career as a helicopter pilot, commercial helicopter pilot. And all of a sudden now I've got a job as a business development manager, which paid about twice that of a pilot. So suffice to say, that was the end of my flying career. And I joined Scottish Amicable, a business development role, which I rose to, and I was probably one of the most successful guys in that space. And I think a lot of the things that I learned in football, the work, how you focus in on things, your work ethic, and being able to adapt and look at stuff differently. I'm quite, objective in that space, and I became a very successful business development manager working for Scottish Amicable.
And that was one of the things I wanted to delve into, was the things that you experienced and learned in footy that helped you in business life, let's call it. Is that a natural progression to, it just because you've been doing those things for so many years on the football field, working in the team, doing your position, doing other bits and pieces, and then you get into something that's completely non-related to footy? Is it just give you this huge grounding that you can say, well, look, I know how to run teams, I know how to be a team player, I know how to do this, I know how to stay in my lane? Did you feel it gave you a real advantage in the business world?
It did. I suppose you do a bit of a gap analysis where your skills are when they're not. And with that in mind, I had, year 10 education, so I had no education at all. And I looked at people that were moving up the ladder in the business that I worked in, and they all had degrees and were, either having degrees or working towards a degree. So I ended up doing a deal with Swinburne University, and I approached them, and Kenny Hunter was the same. He was looking at growing in his role. He worked at Carlton Breweries at the time, and the course that we both looked at was Entrepreneur Innovation stream. And because I had no education, but Swinburne was quite an innovative organisation as a university, they said, we're happy for you to come on board. You've had a fairly good, a lot of life experience, both working, playing footy and being part of a team and high performance and all that sort of stuff. Plus you've been working in the industry for 4 or 5 years. We'll take you on. The only requirement is that you've got to get 2 credits, 2 passes each year to go on to the next level. So you could do a graduate diploma in innovation and entrepreneurship. If you got the 2 credits and 2 passes, you can move on to a diploma. And if you went past that with that meeting that criteria, you can go on and do a master's degree. So I went on, and Kenny Hunter got the outcome he was after. They did some change management at CUB, and everyone had to apply for their own jobs. And a lot of the stuff that we did initially was organisational behaviour and these sorts of things. And they identified Ken as one of those guys that should be a part of that change management in CUB. So he pulled out for 12 months. He got the outcome he was after.
Yep.
Whereas in my case, I went through and I did my Masters in Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And at that time, I was working with Colonial, who acquired Scottish Amicable.
Yep.
And they changed the whole face of the industry, going from a agency-based distribution to one of a franchise model, and they were looking for some people, key people that knew about innovation and change management and all those sorts of things. And I was one of 500 that got identified as one of the key people that they wanted to work with and to drive that new strategy through the group. There was 10 of us out of 500 that got made redundant. 10 of us were identified as the people that they wanted to manage that whole change management program and implement a business operation with people that had some skills in either, in my degree, you look at an idea or a product, you screen that, you take it through a process with a business plan, and then launch that in the marketplace. That was very in line with the training and the education I just had. This is from a year 10 of education to one having masters in entrepreneurship and innovation, and then being able to lead these 200 advisors into a world of business and running their own business as opposed to just being salespeople.
And so how long did you stay with Colonial then? How long were you there for?
I stayed there another 3 years, unbeknownst to me that once we drove that, or set that whole structure up, we basically worked ourselves out of a job. And I got headhunted to move to Sydney and run a funds management business. So I progressed into another role in a different state. I was happy to sort of move to Sydney. I always believe that the quality of your life is determined by how much uncertainty you can handle. So I went up to Sydney and created my own story up here. Knew no one I live in Manly in Sydney, and knew no one, but joined the local lifesaving club to meet people, and ended up being a patrol captain and the club captain, running the club of over 2,000 members and doing the operations for that club. So I continue to develop and grow each year in my roles that I've done.
Did you say rowing club? Is that what you said?
No, I constantly grow as a person and in my roles.
So what sort of club? Was it another footy club? Because it would have been VFL clubs.
It's a lifesaving club.
Ah, okay, right.
So we did patrols on the beach. So Manly's probably one of the biggest lifesaving clubs in Australia. I joined that and ended up as club captain, which is it's an operational role. So I was doing probably 25 hours a week of volunteer work, managing competition, boats, life-saving as in first aid, life-saving, all that sort of stuff, putting together rosters and being able to manage the 14 patrol captains we have, and also do patrols. So it was quite a full-on role, which I did for a couple of years.
Well, considering that you spent all that time in the AFL footy, it would have prepared you for the dress code for the lifesaving club wearing Speedos, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also had the big baggy shorts too.
So you just come further north and just took your singlet off and kept going. So, mate, don't come to Queensland, Warren, because we don't want to see what happens next, right?
Okay.
But in saying that, I mean, you have had plenty of time in Queensland, and that actually interested me how you were sort of in Queensland, but then ended up playing VFL at the time, because that was something that was very unheard of in Queensland space. So you definitely sound like someone who knows what they're doing and wants to follow what they're after, and which leads you to my next question. You kind of found yourself in this new career now for a length of time in financial services. You've gone from a year 10, let's call it education level, to now a master's of entrepreneurship, which is, that's fabulous. Where to next? You've gone to Sydney. Was the move to Sydney, when you landed there, did it feel like a whole new beginning for you? Because I imagine going to some parts of Melbourne, you'd walk down the street and everyone would know you. When you went to Sydney, did no one know you? Like, was that good, or was that a breath of fresh air?
I was quite anonymous, but I did out myself. I got the AFL to sponsor the club, and they had me on the front page of the paper, spruiking AFL, and it's a sport that kids love, and they were trying to obviously get the word out through New South Wales. So it was I was quite anonymous up there, which I'm very humbled when people approach me in the street and all that sort of stuff, particularly in Melbourne. But it's also very refreshing to walk down the street and no one's yelling out as they drive past, show us your bum or something. And so, and I've got a nickname that's quite synonymous with that sort of stuff.
Yes, I know. And
where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, as far as I could find, there was no proof of that it was a story, and you were yet to demonstrate on film that was the case or not. And I'm not asking for that now, but that was an interesting, mate. I liked the way that, whether it's true or not, you ran with it, and it was all to your advantage. I think it was very, very wise.
Bit of an urban myth, so it's quite funny. I'd walk down the street in Melbourne, and I'll have the Prime Minister. I'll share a story. So after the '82 Grand Final, they flew us up to the lodge for dinner with the Prime Minister, which is part of the deal. If we win the Grand Final, he'd fly us up there and had dinner with Tammy Fraser. And I'm sitting there, and this is when you know your name is stuck. When I'm sitting there, and Tammy calls out to me, "Hey, wow, can you pass the salt?" So when the Prime Minister's wife calls you wow, you say, "Well, my name has stuck." And Malcolm Fraser's called me wow. I remember we played in a demonstration sport for the Commonwealth Games, and Mike Fitzpatrick came out and he was introducing us to Prince Philip. And Prince Philip come up to me, and Mike said, "Oh, this is wow." And Prince Philip's reached out and he's shaking my hand and he said, "Nice to meet you, wow." And so my name stuck. I mean, I can get, any given corporate gig I'm at, everyone just refers to me as wow. So I can't, it's just part of the landscape these days.
Well, speaking of landscape, as someone who's been in financial services for what around 30 years or so?
Yeah, maybe a bit longer.
Yep. I mean, that's a landscape that's really changed. And then you touched on it before when we talked about financial planners were essentially, salespeople, a bit like new car salespeople that now are, professional grade, qualified, educated, etc. And you've been part of that journey the whole time. What are the biggest pros and cons of the change in the financial service industry over the last 30 years?
I think the quality, as in the advice and the advisors, and I'm talking more specifically around the independent advisors, whereas the institutional players, I'm being very broad here, so don't take offence. If you've worked in an institution, like a NAB, MLC or something like that, where I worked in recruiting, so I was part of that. But there was a lot of vertical integration where they were just basically promoting and selling their own products that they were manufacturing. Whereas today we've moved away from that, and it's more holistic advice and independent offers that they take to market to provide the solution or meet the objectives of clients.
You would have seen a bunch of people come and go, especially from the how many years ago now? 5-6 years ago with the Royal Commission, and there's a whole bunch of planners that kind of left. What's the story with are we seeing that continue to keep happening to the industry? Like, are they keep leaving, or is it sort of evened out now?
There's a bit of age that has a bit to do with that. It's got a lot of your financial planners are around 50 years of age. There hasn't been a lot coming through from the bottom up, so there's been a lot of advisors, as you say, institutional advisors and others that have left the industry because it was just too hard to do the work, the requirements to meet the requirements going forward. So it's become over-regulated.
Yeah.
The training they've got to do, they've got to have, all the degrees you've got in the past, they don't count anymore. You've got to go off and do some more. A lot of people are just saying it's all too hard. I've been here for too long, and I'm not going to do that. So you had probably 20,000 advisors going back, 10, 20 years ago. And today you've got probably 10 at the most, 10,000 advisors. So what that is...
That's a huge cull. I mean,
it's significant.
Half's gone.
So the problem we have now is that so compliance is a big part of it. So the cost of to get a financial plan these days is becoming quite prohibitive. So an advisor will typically charge a client, I don't know, $4,000 for a plan. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's probably 20 hours of work that's got to be done. There's an overlay of compliance, which is quite costly. And you've got to have a conversation with the client about, paying this $5,000 for this advice. And a lot of clients will balk at it. So the advisor says, well, what we'll do, I'll just charge 3.5 to the next client. And what I'll do is I'll try and capture the rest of that revenue in the next couple of years because of just the cost. So to provide quality advice to clients these days is quite costly. And the advisors are able to select those that have the capacity to pay for that advice. So a lot of the people that, your normal mums and dads or people that are on $100,000 a year can't really afford to pay $5,000 and then a couple of $1,000 each year for financial planning advice. So they miss out, and there's a big hole there where a lot of people just aren't having that quality advice which they should and are entitled to.
And so what happens? I mean, do they just not get any advice? Do they get crap advice, or do they go to like online robo-style advice?
That's all they can really do. They can. Some of the industry funds provide some pretty basic advice, and generally it's what they call product advice. So this is what you've got, and I'll provide you with the advice around what you've currently got. I'm not going to change you and move you into something else. And some structured or quite full-on advice, they miss out on that.
In your experience with clients, by missing out, that adversely impacts them for the rest of their life and their financial future, or do they get to make up for it somehow?
So I suppose an example of that is, a pretty basic concept is when you get to 55 years of age, you can move into transition to retirement, which essentially means that you're on the way to becoming, you go down the path of moving into a pension type environment. So, you can essentially take some money. You can take some money out of your super fund and then reinvest it back in again. So you can do a salary sacrifice of $30,000 a year, and basically move it around. If you're over 60, you can move it around, take it out and put it back in again, or use that money. So you get a deduction and then you use the money to fund some lifestyle. But at the same time, there's some impact on your portfolio if you did that.
And those are those things people don't. Yeah, those are the things that people don't know because they don't get to talk to an advisor, because now there's half of the advisors around that they were 10 years ago, and they're now twice or more as expensive.
So another example is salary sacrifice. Not many people know about salary sacrifice. How does that work? Where you can actually put a bit more money into super. We've had a rule the last few years because of COVID that you can essentially put in $30,000 each year into superannuation, and if you haven't worked for 3 years, you've got the capacity to put in $90,000 into your super and get a tax deduction for it, because it's what's called a catch up of your contributions which you didn't have the opportunity to do. So it gives people who've got less than $500,000 the opportunity to top up their super and get the tax deduction for it that most people don't even know that it existed. And I found out the hard way. My accountant was retired. He didn't know about that. So my new accountant sort of said, you can put in $90,000 because you didn't work for a couple of years. You got $90,000 worth of contribution you can tip in and get a tax deduction. I didn't even know. So again, I'm not giving advice here. This is the reality of what you can do. And if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's the big issue with the I guess, the upset in the financial planning industry is that whilst they're trying to clean it out, they cleared it out. And it's really difficult when I'm on the street talking to people that they don't even know where to go to or who to trust. And the problem is that they either don't get something, they don't get any advice, they don't seek it out because it's too hard, or they try and make it up themselves, which I think is, I'm all for people being in control of their own money, but some of the things I've seen people kind of invest into or do because they don't even have a sounding board of someone is just, it's horrible.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on out there. There has been a lot of products that you shouldn't have been investing in. You've got people that's scamming, invest in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There's that much out there that people are sort of worried about getting the wrong advice or getting the wrong investment product, or that a proper financial planner that's licensed as part of a good dealer group that's above board. You're getting the right products that deliver the outcomes that a client wants, and they've been researched by their investment committees and so forth in the dealer groups where the advisors are licensed through.
And on that note, I mean, that's where you're sitting right now in the firm that you're at. And
Yep.
one of the things that I saw that you were talking about was IMAs and SMAs. Do you want to explain them and the difference between the two?
So an SMA is a separate managed account where any punter can go on and invest through a platform even without an advisor if they want to, and they end up with a portfolio of, could be stocks or managed funds or ETFs, which are very transparent and managed by a professional manager. And then you've got an IMA, which is an individually managed account, which is where the client has a management agreement with the investment manager. That's what we do. We run IMAs where we've got clients with $1 and $2 and $3 million, and they want to give us the money. It can come through a financial planner that directs the client to us, and the manager, the financial planner works out what the objectives are of a client and what they want from an outcome point of view. They come to us, and we build a bespoke portfolio using a direct global portfolio made up of about 20 stocks, and a direct domestic portfolio made up by another 20 stocks,
Yep.
and then some fixed interest that will complement whether they want some income or less income and more growth. So the SMA, the agreement is with the platform, which could be a Net Wealth or a Hub24.
Yep.
The agreement's between, and they just match our models for that client, whereas the IMA, they come to us directly through an advisor or separately, and we could create a specific portfolio that meets their needs. And everyone's different. We've got clients with $20 million, we've got other clients with $1 million. And each needs are different, and risk profile is different, and what the outcomes they want.
And the advantage of an IMA is obviously it's specific per client, as you've outlined, but it's because it's not a managed fund, there's not that overlay of fees, right? So you can actually choose to invest straight into a specific stock, as you mentioned, and it just takes out of that overlay of management off it, right?
Yeah, so you've got, there's a lot of managed funds out there. Your industry funds are managed funds. You've got a pool of money that's been invested, and you're a unit holder in that fund. So you're just a number within that fund. You've got no transparency. You don't know really where you're invested, whether it be geographically or in what particular industries. Whereas our portfolios in private portfolio managers, where I work, PPM, we run direct equity portfolios. So you've got 20 stocks in the global, you've got 20 stocks domestically. The client is the beneficial owner of the stocks. They get all the income, they get the franking credits. They can come in a different structures. It may be a self-managed super fund,
Yep.
It may be personal money, and it may be a family trust. And each are treated differently from an after-tax point of view. And we're able to have those stocks sitting in the different structures that provides the best after-tax outcome that we can deliver for the client. So again, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So managed funds, it all just goes in wholes bowlers. Some people get a bit of a benefit from more income than they're probably entitled to. They might get a bit less or more franking credits than they're entitled to. Whereas with our portfolios, that's their stocks in their name. They can see what companies they hold. We don't turn them over too much, so it doesn't create capital gains tax issues.
Yeah.
Whereas in the managed fund, they might be churning through 100 different companies on a regular basis, which if there's some good returns that they've experienced, you get a bill from the tax department each year saying we owe us $5,000.
Yeah.
They go, hang on, well, my 15% headline rate just became 10% because I've got all this tax to pay if they were in the highest marginal tax rate.
Do you think that in general, like the general public that's looking at investing, comprehends the difference between a direct share investment and a managed fund?
No idea.
Yeah.
So I'm not being derogatory about people's intelligence, or it's just that it's quite complex, and these words get thrown around: managed funds, managed accounts, IMAs. What's the difference?
Yeah.
I did a presentation the other night for an advisor and his clients up in Queensland, and one of the questions they asked was, we invested in Hub24, and I said, well, no, you're not. That's actually the platform that it sits on. You've got the investments in direct shares.
Yeah.
You've got 40 stocks that you hold, and Hub24 ain't one of them. That's just the system that is used to provide that reporting and so forth. So it can be quite complicated, and normal people don't really have the understanding of the concepts of different investment vehicles. What's the LIC? What's a LIC? Listed investment company.
Yeah.
It's just a proprietary limited company that has stocks, and it's just you own shares in that particular stock of stocks.
Yeah.
Then you've got ETFs. What's an ETF? A lot of people wouldn't even know what they were. And
well, I don't mind ETFs. I was going to ask you your thoughts on ETFs because you mentioned them before, and I know that they're a lot lower cost, but it's the same thing. You kind of have to have a clue of what you're investing in, otherwise you might as well just go to a dartboard.
Yeah, it's essentially just a cheap way of entering into the markets. Where ETFs first started they were just sector specific. You could invest in an Australian ETF or a US ETF, which is essentially the index generally. So it's just a cheap way of getting some index coverage using an ETF. Whereas you could go and get Vanguard, an index fund, through a managed fund, which is the index. And then there's a whole lot of variations of it too. These hybrids, and we actually don't own the underlying investment behind it. So there's a couple of traps for those that don't really understand. They're not the same. They're all different in different ways and got their different and nuances. But we're very happy with the way we operate, and that is direct equity exposure.
Yeah.
Clients have they can see what they've got. Because what happens is the first time there's a bit of a crash, let's just say the tech stocks have a bit of a deep dive, and the clients ring up the advisor and say, am I invested in tech stocks? Because they don't know. I'm invested in a managed fund, but what's underneath there, we don't know. And my old cliche is that, when the tide goes out, you can see who's wearing bathers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Speedos in Sydney at Life Saving Club even.
Yeah, exactly right. It's only when the tide goes out you can see who's wearing bathers. So, whereas our stuff, you know exactly what stocks you hold,
I
you know
agree.
what geographical area you're in. And it's your stocks. They've got your name on it. No one can do anything or take them off you. So if a client wanted to leave, they just take their stocks and go and get someone else to manage their money for them. We just sit over the top and provide that structuring from an after-tax perspective.
No, I agree. And I mean, we haven't even touched on the fact of the mandate of the funds. where, you know, they have to have their balance in the right, you know, as per the deed of the fund, you know, in certain amounts in cash, and whatever they've said they've got to do, which means that, you know, that's a whole other topic, right? Good performing stocks get sold because it's going to take the balance of the fund out and all that sort of stuff. So managed funds have a place, but what is that place, Warren? If someone said, I've got 10 grand or 20 grand or 50 grand, at what point do they come to go, an IMA is the better setup versus just starting out in managed fund or ETF?
So I think, if you've got people that are accumulating a portfolio, and maybe in their cases, they're probably better off looking at indexed funds or in, something like Vanguard has, a bit of global, bit of, fixed interest, a bit of, domestic, and a low cost way to accumulate money. Costs have a lot to do with it. So you try and minimise the outlay of investing there. But as you accumulate your wealth, and that's where we come in, a lot of people come to us when they've accumulated a fair bit of money, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, and they'll come to us and say, listen, don't lose my money, but I just want a reasonable return of between 8 and 12%. And now I'm happy with that. And because of the nature of our portfolio, we don't trade the stock very much. We look at companies with strong balance sheets, a good marketplace that they operate in, and we pay a fair price for the stock. So those three criteria are a starting point for, we're not going to get the extreme 35% return. We'll probably get 30, and we're happy to give away that top 10%. And where we come into play is when the market comes off by 20, we come off by 5 or 10.
Yeah.
So we're capturing the extra 20% or the inability to get or lose that extra 20%. We actually capture that because of our low volatility through the stocks that we invest in. So we don't get this up and down.
Yeah.
We just go like this so that our clients can sleep at night. Because the stocks that are at the top end that are really shooting the lights out, they're the ones that get knocked around when the market comes off. Whereas the stocks that we invest in, they might not get the absolute return that the speculative stuff does.
Yeah.
But the first thing that happens when the market crashes, those with a strong balance sheet and a good company that we've paid a fair price for, they're the ones that don't get knocked around too much.
Yeah, but you've got to be able to pass the sleep test, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
There's not much point. Look, we see it with our clients as well all the time.
We don't want to have the roller coaster ride.
No, that's exactly right. One of the things I wanted to ask you was talking about the general populace or the general sort of clients that first come to you.
Yep.
What is the area that you think most people struggle to understand with money or investing?
Oh, where do you start? The old rule of 72 is a good one.
Oh, yes. You want to explain that?
So the rule of 72 essentially is that whatever interest rate you've got return on your investment, let's just say it's 10% return. So if you divide that by 72, it tells you that it's going to take you 7.2 years to double your money.
Yep.
So if you get 10% consistently across the board, let's just say you've got $1 million in your account, end of year 7.2, you've got $2 million, because your $1 million now become 2.
Sure.
And then in 14 years, you've now got 4. In 21 years, you've now got 8.
Yep.
In 28, you've got
16.
16.
Yep.
So just if people understand the impact of compounding, I think Einstein said it was the 8th wonder of the world.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to do too much to double your money. Because you imagine if you're getting 20% return each year, every 3 years you're doubling your money.
So if more people thought like that, understood those rules and what have you, I mean, you can't speak on behalf of others, but how do you think that their investing would change? Or would it simply be that they took more interest in investing?
Yeah, they should. I think it should be taught at schools with the young kids to understanding, what compounding does, but also we see the compare the pair. You've got someone, there's fees have an impact over time, but you've also got, if you start investing today, and I want $1 million I'm going to retire in 10 years' time, I'm going to put $100,000 in each year for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go back a couple of centuries and say, well, I'll start when I'm 30, I only have to put $30,000 a year into super each year to get my $1 million for when I retire. So it's time. Time is a pretty big say in what your outcome's going to look like. If you leave it too long, you've got to throw a fair bit of cash in to catch up to those that are sort of already there. You can start too late. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
the kids should be doing it at 14 or 15. They should be saving first and then spending their loose change once they've saved, and they can see that building up. And there's no reason why, a young kid putting, $100 a week into their savings plan could end up with $1 million in, 20 years' time just by doing that.
Do you think people are inherently saving more or less nowadays?
I think the last 5 years, people are really struggling with interest rates having gone up. People are struggling to put food on the table.
And when they struggle, we don't save. But has spending dropped? Because there still seems to be a lot of new cars and stuff around.
Yeah, you go out and talk to restaurants and pubs and stuff that people aren't spending money. Clothing in particular.
Yeah.
The first thing they stop doing is buying clothes. I've got a friend, Alex Marcoon, I played with at Carlton. He's got a clothing wholesale business or a warehouse, and he's feeling the pinch. He goes out and sees these clients and buys stuff off him, and they're really struggling. It's a real challenge for them.
And do you think that there's the people who aren't going to restaurants and aren't buying new clothes and what have you, they're also not saving and investing?
They're not. They just don't have the capacity. They're all paying mortgages and so forth. And then, you go to a pub these days, $15 or something for a beer game. Like, it's just unbelievable.
Well, especially when you used to be able to get them off the back of a truck, right?
Yeah, exactly right. You'd be amazed at what falls off the back of a truck. Even kids today, they've two things that have happened is that kids of today don't drink, believe it or not. A lot of them don't drink. They'll go to a pub and club and they'll just drink water all night because they don't want to knock their body around because they've got this issue with body shaming and all that sort of stuff. They want to keep the six-pack and have a good-looking body rather than a pot belly.
Yeah.
So they don't, that's where the drugs are taking a bit of a hold too. They can spend $30 and buy a tablet and have a good night as opposed to spending $200 at the pub.
Yeah, right.
So some other issues there in amongst that, but they just don't spend the money.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? So there's still a lot of money going around in some circles. In others, it's tightening up. So okay, what's the one thing you could tell anybody about all your experience in all your from your teams, running the teams in VFL, being part of a team, going into your career in finance, even being helicopter. Do you still fly?
I haven't flown for a number of years now. I have flown probably about 5 years ago. I just jumped in a helicopter with a mate of mine was having a couple of lessons, and I got the chance to fly. I think went from down Camden some way and flew an old what they call a Kirawa, which is a Jet Ranger, an old military aircraft. So a bit of fun flying that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. So yeah, all your experience thus far in all your career and different careers, and then the different positions within the finance. What's your one tip you could give someone, whether it's a young kid or a young family starting out with their money investing? What's the one thing that you could tell them?
I think you've got to have open eyes about what you want to do in the future. Goals and aspirations, and you've got to have goals to focus on. And then redefine them, ongoing. That's probably the main thing. And just believe in yourself, be the best you can. People quite often say that, I wish I had been able to do that or I could have done that. Most people have got the ability to do whatever they want to do in life. And the opportunities in Australia in particular, you can be whatever you want to be in this world,
Yeah, that's good.
It's just, put the hard work in, identify the goals you want and work hard to achieve the outcomes you want. I played AFL football and I wasn't a great player, but I played for 12 years. And I did the best I possibly could with what I had. And I've seen players come through that didn't have the skills. You'd say, well, this guy's never going to make the game or make the grade, and they end up popping out the other side and becoming a great player.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. And also, give you opportunity for a bit of a plug. I mean, you've outlined what you do at PPM, but if you want to give us a complete rundown and a bit of a promo, feel free.
Yeah, so I work for Private Portfolio Managers, or PPM, and as I said before, we run a couple of or two direct share portfolios, which are global and domestic, which anyone can access through Hub24 through an advisor. You can't come direct. That may change if we get onto NetWealth's platform.
Right.
And you can have $50,000 in global and 20 into domestic. Again, if there's an advisor involved. Or those that have accumulated a bit of wealth, they might have a few $1 million. They can come to us with their advisor and we can create a bespoke portfolio for them using those direct equity portfolios where you have that transparency. You've got the ownership, you're the beneficial owner, you get all the income, you get the franking credits, and it's your portfolio. We don't change them too much, and they're quality stocks that aren't overly impacted by the different turns of events that we have in the stock market. So that's what we do, and it's a low cost offer, and we don't have a performance fee. We've got skin in the game. If we grow the portfolio, the client's going to benefit, and so are we. And we're a privately owned organisation, been around for 30 years, and we currently got just under $1 billion under management. That's started to grow quite significantly.
Mate, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. If anyone watching this needs to get in contact with an advisor so they can then go and see Warren and the crew at PPM, then feel free to contact us via the links attached to this video. Warren, thank you for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I know we touched on some footy and a bunch of other stuff, but mate, thank you for your time. It's been really good.
You're welcome. Thanks, Scott.
Mate, that was Warren Jones, the wow himself, and what an absolute legend and a great guy to talk to. And make sure if you're catching the end of this that you go back to the start and watch all the stuff that Warren has to talk about with his career, in both careers, in footy and in finance. So thanks for joining me today.